Okay, I think we can start. We have two participants still coming, but maybe we can start now. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sabrina. I'm a creative consultant at Salt, and I will be hosting this webinar. So today we will be talking about the business value of design. But before we start, I would like to tell you a few words maybe about Salt. At least you know what we are doing and why is it relevant for us to have this conversation. So we are a global digital recruitment firm. Global because, as you can see in this map, our network is quite broad. So our HQ is in London, but we have also offices in the US, in South Africa, Dubai, Australia, New Zealand, and here in Southeast Asia, we are talking about Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And we are digital because we only cover those roles that require digital skills. And within this digital space, we are specialized in 4 different pillars. So one of the pillars is digital marketing, under which we have roles like CMO, content, SEO, PR, comms, etc. We have also a pillar called digital sales, pre-sales, BD, account leasing, etc. And then we have also tech. Tech is quite a big desk. We cover data science, developers, engineers, IT, and last but not least, creative desk, because this is why we are here today to talk about design. So of course we have roles like UX, UI, web designers, but not only, because we also cover agency roles, like for example, art direction, copywriting, and we have also studio roles like videographers or producers. And we really like to host events on a regular basis because it helps us to really stay connected with the market and hear professionals talking about on-trend topic or very specific local insights. And then it helps us to guide our candidates, but also to stay relevant in our conversation with our client. So in this slide, you have examples of events that we have hosted in the past. So usually those are physical events. So I remember the last one we had in Malaysia was about the future of PR in the digital era. But regarding the situation now, we are hosting more and more webinars. A few weeks ago, we had a tech fair, a job fair in Singapore, where we showcased a number of jobs in the tech space, and we went through one by one, advising our candidates on how are the skills required, etc. And for this one, because it's on digital, we were thinking, okay, why not we go regional, as Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong are sharing many common grounds when it comes to design. So that's why today we have 3 different speakers, and each of them will be representing each country. So let's start with a quick introduction. Let's start with Jan. Jan is the design lead and CX at Accenture Interactive KL. Can you, Jan, tell us a few words about you?
Hey, hello everyone. Nice to see everyone, at least online. So a few words about myself. I was born in Czech Republic in the middle of Europe. I was studying economics and business management in my university, and I was running my own design agency for almost 8 years, mostly serving US and European clients. And then somehow I took a laptop and took the business to Asia 6 years ago. I settled down in Kuala Lumpur, and at the moment I lead the experience design practice for Accenture Interactive in Malaysia. And we usually do work for many different corporate clients, mostly at the moment in ASEAN, but also in America, Europe. And what I'm passionate about: music, art, nature, traveling. Obviously, even now it's a bit hard. So, and I'm happy to share some of the insights that I acquired during the last years or months with everyone on the call. Looking forward to this.
All right, thank you, Jan. And then let's say hello to Mikael. Mikael is in Finland at the moment. He's the design director at Wärtsilä. So even if Mikael is in Finland, he has a great experience in Southeast Asia, and he's still covering the Singapore market from Finland for his current company. Hi, Mikael.
Hello, good morning from Finland. It's 8 a.m. here, and the only thing I think we have in common with Singapore is that it's raining at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm Mikael, and as said, representing Singapore here at a distance. I'm a Finn, as you might see from the strange dots on the A there. And I'm originally an industrial designer who then eventually transitioned to UX design and became a product owner. And now, as Sabrina said, I'm the design director of this company with another funny name with strange dots on the A's. We are a Finnish company, probably not well known, but globally operating. And we are one of these companies that in the background, you could say, keep the world rolling. So, for example, one thing we do is that almost every second ship that sails globally on the oceans is somehow touched by our services or products. So we are a technology manufacturing company. And yeah, with that, I hope to bring also kind of this in-house, but also a business-to-business aspect to this discussion, just to give a bit of variety. And to add to why we are in Singapore, that has been, again, on the maritime industry side, as with automotive, any kind of autonomous operation is now the hot potato, excuse me, and Singapore has been our studio, both for human-centric design and technology in enabling autonomous ship operations. So,
all right, thank you, Mikael.
Next, Michael, I guess.
Thank you. Yes, now it's not Mikael, but Michael. So Michael is in Hong Kong. He is the Global Associate Design Director at IBMX. Hi, Michael.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Really lovely to meet everyone. Just a little bit about myself, I guess. My life has sort of been going through a lot of pivots, I would say. Lifestyle-wise and career-wise, I was born in Hong Kong. Spent half my life in New Zealand. At one point when I was in university, I thought I'm going to be an accountant. So that I can't believe it turns out to be a designer now. So I pivot a lot. I spent a big part of my career in advertising, and the last couple of years pivot towards more service design, product design with IBM, and now I just moved to our global team as well. So it's really, really fun, and what I love the most is meeting new people, meeting fellow designers, exchanging thoughts, and which is why I'm very glad to be here with the rest of you guys and to learn from each of you and share.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I think this is a kickoff. Maybe just to let our audience know, we have allocated time around, let's say, 15 minutes at the end of this conversation for a Q&A session. So we have already received many questions at the registration stage, but please continue on the Zoom chat to share your question with us, and we will try to answer the maximum in the end. So, let's start. I would like first to maybe set the topic and ask you a simple question, because you guys are hiring managers, right? So you know that it became challenging for designers to get a job. So why is it important for candidates to know about the value of design? Why are we talking about this today? Who want to start?
I can go.
Go,
sure.
Go, Jan.
And I'm gonna be completely open and honest about this and blunt, you know, because I hope that whatever we say here, stay here, yeah, everyone. So basically,
yeah, it's just being recorded.
From my perspective, most people with money in the world and most people in decision-making positions are not designers. And basically, without them understanding, you know, what we bring to the table as designers, there's not going to be any design happening. And this topic really is something in my mind, which is the difference between a successful designer or successful company and non-successful designer, non-successful company. And this really is true for any level of design, meaning that, for example, if you're a junior designer and you want to ask for a raise, if you're a design lead and you are talking to a client about the results of your design, if you're a design director and you're pitching to the client, you have to be able to convince them that if they give you $1 million, for example, something good is going to happen for the business.
Yeah.
So bridging the world of design and business is super essential, especially now where a lot of designers were retrenched, a lot of people got laid off from many companies. And the first question, if you apply for a job, let's say right now, is going to be that the company or the hiring manager is going to be asking you, So what do you bring to my company? What is the value that you bring to the table? And this is something that if designers, any levels, if they can answer this, it's going to be very, very hard for everyone to be successful in this new climate. So I'm hoping that by the end of this webinar, everyone will be a bit smarter how to explain these questions and how to basically translate the business value of design to people who have never heard about UX before, for example, because eventually those are usually the ones holding the power to give you the money to make something happen.
Yeah.
And I think this topic comes up right now in the last 6 months a lot, you know, and I think it's a reflection of the maturity of the world, the business world, and the maturity of the design industry as well, because to a certain extent, it is an age-old challenge. How do we validate the value of design? How do we demonstrate the value of design, right? And I think it really go back to now, it seems that we have an audience from the business world that willing to, they recognize, you know, let's not put it like them and us, but that's the age-old setup, right? And let's be candid about it. That's how it is. We need to address that situation. Then we know how to define it. And now we have an audience who are willing to listen to us. What is the value of design? So as designers, no matter what, I guess, what seniority you are, we have to be part of this conversation. And then I think it goes to each of us. How do we define it? And for me, design is problem solving. I think that at the very end, you know, at the very core of it is business problem solving. So I think if we start from there, we can slowly kind of build the case of what is that value of design. And I guess Mikael would have a lot of example of that as well.
Yeah, no, I can only add to what was said here by the guys, and maybe putting it into context, like you Michael said, it shouldn't be us versus them, but if we look at design as a whole, whether it's UX, industrial, service design, whatnot, it's still quite a new player in the field of business. I mean, we haven't been around for decades. So we could also think about who are the other people clamoring for attention of the C-suite. There is marketing, there's engineering, there is product management. What are they talking about? How are they getting the attention? They are already established there in the discussion. So what can we learn from them as well? We like to think that we designers are different, but will we succeed if we are only being different? Or can we be different while also picking up the good things from people who have had this same situation before, like marketing maybe in the 50s or 60s? It was not a given that they will get the budget and they will have a marketing department. It was a novelty. But we, I think, are on the same curve.
All right, thank you. So this is in a designer perspective. You are talking also about the stakeholders, right? So when it comes to CEOs, directors, they are not designers, as you just mentioned. Why is it also important for them to understand the value of design? And maybe here, because you guys are coming from different industries, maybe we can have one perspective from in-house and one perspective from consultancy or agencies, because I think it would be quite different.
If we keep the tempo, I can go first. then we have the structure. So, and maybe to kind of wrap up the first question as well, is that I can see that a lot of designers right now are wasting too much time by knowing how to do wireframing, how to do visual design, how to do something, but they are forgetting a lot about the most essential question, that what I do tell my stakeholders that this is going to be the impact of that. Because if the stakeholders, which is the second question that we have, if they don't understand what your wireframing does for the product or for the company, they will just have no idea what you mean by that. And for example, I can see a lot where designers are having portfolios or case studies or things like that, and they spend way too much time on Dribble without actually talking to stakeholders. Hey, I did this visual design, and this is the impact, this is what it did. So from a stakeholder's perspective, I work in a consultancy, so I can talk from the consultancy background or from that perspective. So what really works well in Malaysia, for example, or globally in that case, is that when you talk to the client, let's say I had a presentation last week to the C-level executive in Malaysia, and we want to do design work for them. And none of them is a designer. None of them knows nothing about wireframing, visual design, none of that. And what my job is to actually convince them that if they hire us as a company who is going to be doing experience design for them, there's going to be some value for them. And a real sample of this could be what I call cost of bad design calculations, right? So what happened in Malaysia, for example, is that there is a huge telco company, and if you want a new service from them, if you want to register for a new service, you have to go to the branch physically and fill the papers and do all the things like that. COVID made that impossible. And unless you have a new design solution, which is gonna basically make everything possible, you're gonna lose a lot of money. So what we did from this perspective to those stakeholders is that we provided them calculations, how much money they're gonna be making more if the design solution, what we're proposing, is implemented. And this sort of a gap, this link between design perspective and business perspective is completely essential, especially when you go into more senior roles. Because if you pitch, let's say, to the CMO or people like that, they don't really care what you're gonna do. They don't care about your methodology so much because everybody's doing double diamond anyway, in a way. But they care about what is gonna bring to the business. Are you able to bring us new customers? Are you able to increase the revenues? Are you gonna make lives easier for the customers that we have? Are you gonna do something like that? And that's the language that stakeholders understand. So that's why it's extremely crucial for any designer eventually to become better at this. So they're gonna get paid, you know. And if we as a designers can't do this well, we're not gonna be making too much money in the future, basically. So. That, I think, to me is extremely important, and it really doesn't matter if you're director or junior designer. The better you are at this, the more successful you're gonna be. No, period, in a way.
Couldn't agree more.
Sorry,
go.
Yeah. If I can sort of elaborate on that and bring in another aspect then from the kind of manufacturing B2B side where I'm in-house, is that obviously our C-suite cares about money and our customers' C-suite cares about the money. But as a designer, we are always priding ourselves in that we ask the why questions and we know what is the right problem. So also we should explore what are the things that keep these guys up at night. So in our setting, maritime industry, actually what I hear mostly from our clients is safety. Safety at sea, safety of our crew, safety of our ship, safety of the cargo. That of course translates into revenue, into money for the client. But if safety is not there, and if we can't showcase that we improve safety, and that's of course now a very niche topic for my industry, but also as an example, think what does the client want? What is keeping them up at night? In the end, it probably is the continuation of the business, which is the money, but what translates into the revenue in that business. In our business, it might be safety, it might be efficiency, so the less fuel the ship uses, the cheaper it is. But these kind of design KPIs or drivers behind why you do design can vary from industry to industry. So also do your homework and keep an eye on what the business in general is talking about. And then maybe another thing to note from the B2B perspective is that we have, I'm not saying that B2C wouldn't have, but we have a pronounced complexity of stakeholders. So usually our sales guys will go and sit with the decision makers at the client side who wear suits and sit in a nice air-conditioned office, and they will make a lot of promises on value. So it will be this much safer, it will save this much fuel, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, we design the product, we deliver it, and the guy in the suit who made the investment decision, he will never see the product. He will just see the result that product will make, and it's the guys in the overalls on the ship who will make that promise. So for us as designers in this field, if we don't understand the guys in the overalls, we might actually create solutions that they are not comfortable with. I've heard, I haven't had a personal experience, but I've heard of occasions where, with all good intentions, new technology was delivered to a ship, and by mistake someone hit it with a big hammer because they just didn't like it. So there's your great value promise to the CEO that, hey, we have this fancy new piece of technology. If the guys on the ship don't like it, they are not going to use it, and the whole sales pitch basically breaks down. So in B2B, understanding both the decision makers and what I like to call the guys who create the value in the end is essential to create the good design and talk the right language. So you need to talk to both sides there. I don't know, Michael, how does it look from your end?
I think the responsibility lies with everyone. When we talk about the stakeholders, you mentioned about the the marketing people, the business the business owner who will look at a certain problem. It could be a design problem, it could be a business problem. From a costing point of view, from a revenue point of view, I think it makes perfect sense, right? People run the business to make money, and at the same time, the responsibility also lies with the designer to convey, to guide the conversation. I think someone mentioned, that the role of a designer is not just holding that pen and piece of paper and draw and craft, but that's part of it. But it's also, as a facilitator, you need to emphasize not just the user, but also emphasize the business stakeholder. What's their pain point? What do they really need? And then guide that conversation. And then I think as we all pay attention to details like this, and then it will help the conversation to move forward. And I think there's a lot of age-old baggage in this whole conversation of design, because from a business point of view, we do tend to think of design as artsy, fartsy, something kind of intangible, but it's not. Like Jan was saying, there's a concrete cost. If you don't address a design problem, you will miss out from a business sense. You'll miss out from moving. You basically your business could fall simply because you do not address a design problem. I mean, think of Nokia, right? All those years ago, not looking at their business problem from a design point of view, or as a whole. Basically, it was a misstep from a business point of view as well. So imagine if they have someone come from the left field and basically tell them, hey, you got to look at it, from a user point of view, you got to look at it from a trend point of view. How do you restructure the business? And then that is a responsibility, shouldn't just fall on any single one stakeholder. It's a collective. It's the business people need to understand, to not just look at design as beautifying things, but also from a design point of view, your role is not just to beautify things. It's too often designers fall back to just beautify things. Anyone, I don't know how many people we have in here, 36 participants. Any one of you are part of that Facebook group called UI UX Designer. That group, God, so many times I see posts, people just throw in a screen and say, give me a like if you like it, if you think it's good. And then there's no, like Jan was saying, it's just a screen, just some sort of beautified graphic. There's no logic behind it.
Okay.
If I can just one thing add to this, which we're chatting here before we started, and what Jan said as well, that our stakeholders, they have these familiar things, like, for example, the NPS score or some other metric. There's always this desire to put numerical values on things, how things are going. And I think one, and what also touches back a bit on what Mikael said, doing things design first. I think the unique quality that designers have is that we can bring that qualitative insight into those abstract numbers. So why do people give this NPS score? Yeah. If Nokia would have done an NPS survey, they would maybe have noticed that the numbers go down, but no one knew why it is going down.
Yeah. I think designer holding on to that role of helping business to craft that why is very, very unique, or else we will all be just looking at what is this screen is about, but instead of why are we doing this screen, right? That is very, very important.
Yeah.
If I can add one thing to this, Sabrina, just so we can wrap up. I can see designers crying all the time. I'm only doing the things that I've been told to do by somebody else. And like transition from this follower mindset to the leader's mindset is so essential right now. And usually why it happens is because people making these strategic decisions, they don't have a design person in there. So if more designers understand the business, they will become part of a business. They will have a seat at the table where the strategic decisions are being made. So they will be not followers, just do something that we need to do, we need you to do, but they will be actually able to initiate projects, initiate products, initiate decision-making. And I think that's the key point. If people can remember something from this, to go from a follower mindset to the leader's mindset, to really lead by design, like Tesla, Netflix, or Airbnb is doing. I think that's the key change, because, for example, when it comes to consultancy, a lot of people who are making decisions, design is really new for them. They don't know what it is. They don't really know how they can use it for their own advantage. And our responsibility is to explain it to them and not to complain why I can't do that cool design that I see online because I don't have money for it or something. So this explanation, this convincing part, is hugely important for the people. If you're a designer or if you're designing whoever, it's your responsibility to explain this to people so they understand.
I think we are at a day and age where it makes all the stakeholders in this conversation very honest. You know, designers not pushing enough, not having their own point of view, no matter what rank or seniority you are, you'll be being called out. You're being called out for, like Jan was saying, you're being called out as just a follower. You're not delivering value. But at the same time, business stakeholders for not recognizing that you don't know about design and not willing to let go of the ego and then actually involve a designer, you will also being called out, but not by the designer, but by the business, because you will miss out on leveraging the value of design to evolve and push your business forward. So I think it's a good age that we are in.
Yeah. But then, I'm sorry, maybe this is a tricky question. This is my next question. Okay, so this was the theory, right? How can I do this in practice? Like, I'm a designer. How can I bridge my creative and my design with the business? How can I play my part in this conversation? Where do I start?
I go?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to give, let's say, 2 examples, and one for a startup and one for a big company. Let's say that you are a designer in a startup and you work in e-commerce, and the founders have no idea what design is and what it can provide to the business. And how you should start as a designer to play this role is to focus on some problem, solve it, and then showcase the result to your stakeholders, you know? So for example, let's say that you work in a company which is selling fashion, selling clothes, right? And you know that if you decrease the amount of clicks, the amount of steps that people need to do before checkout, it's going to increase the conversion rate, let's say by 3%. And this is going to make some extra amount of money. And this, if you do that right, and you showcase the results to your managers or to the stakeholders, they will not only be impressed by what you did and maybe give you more money as a salary, but they most likely will listen to you in the future, because they will know that your design can actually improve the business overall. But what I see a lot is that a lot of designers are talking too much too much talking and not enough doing. And people in decision-making roles, they don't have time. They don't have time to listen to all this talk. So they need to see real tangible results on paper, ideally. So even if you don't say anything, you just do something and showcase results, which is going to improve the business, then it will open doors for you for more things design. And in a consultancy perspective, if you pitch to the client, you can't really be telling them something that you think is going to work. You need to have a research-based suggestions for their business, how they can basically make the business model more efficient, how they can basically get more customers, how they can make transition for people from offline to online and things like that. So the real tangible results, from my point of view, is completely key step to showcase your value. And if it really is something super small, like I increased conversion rate by 0.5% and it's going to make only this much of money, it's already the step in the right direction. And then in the future, you will be able to do big things. But the first step is essential, like identifying some sort of a pain point in the key journey, fixing it, and showcase the value or the impact of that decision, of that design. And then the stakeholders will be like, oh my God, that's awesome. I never thought about this, that we even need it. So I think to me, that's the key step. How can designer start playing more of a business role in any organization?
That's a really valid point. And to add to that, and what I see people also forgetting quite a lot, also designers, is that not only can you improve, for example, conversion rate or increase revenue or let's say build things above the top line with design, but you can also generate a lot of savings and you can showcase those savings. So I know we have quite a lot of UX people on the lines here, and for example, a topic we discussed here when getting to know Mikael and Jan is the topic of design systems, and a design system as such is not a revenue bringing tool unless you can monetize it somehow and sell it to others. But a design system can be a huge source of savings in development, for example. So, for example, my recent years, boss battle has really been selling the idea of a design system inside the company, and why does it make business sense to spend a bit more time up front to generate a library of components and templates and so on. And how we got about this was that we calculated how much time does a UX designer and a front-end guy spend on average per project on repetitive things like buttons, modals, templates, lists, and so on. And when you take that amount of time, add or extrapolate that with the average hourly salary, you actually get a nice number to showcase that if we would invest now 2 months of work and get all of these components done, it would cost this much. If we don't do it, every team will be creating the button from scratch in every project, and it will cost this much. So which way do we go?
That's true.
I think it's interesting when we talk about measure or business value, design value of this. The business value of design. A lot of the time we think of it as a future tense sort of thing. You do a design and then you measure the design. But I think to me, it's actually the other way around. You, as a designer or even as a business stakeholder, you got to work out together. What is that target outcome? Right? Work backwards. Yeah. You know, that target outcome could be NPS score, could be decreased clicks, could be increased revenue, whatever that is. That's an alignment. You got to work it out. And then, but having that target outcome comes from asking the why. You got to observe, you got to research, you got to look for what is that business problem that you're trying to address, and that becomes your target outcome. Yeah. And then you work backwards to it. Yeah. And then I really as you work backwards, yeah, there's different ways to prototype it. I think that would be the key to measurement.
Just wanted to highlight here one thing that we actually have taken into use. We have also service designers working in my team, and one of them brought up this fantastic tool or template, a canvas basically, for testing your hypothesis. So you have a design idea. Everyone will love this when I go and show it. So you actually have a couple of columns there, and one of the columns is the acceptance criteria, and we have taken the way that we have to write the acceptance criteria before we go and test the hypothesis. So if we have a great idea and we think that 8 out of 10 sales guys will say that they can sell this to the customer, we have to first write down 8 out of 10 is the success criteria. Then we go and talk to 10 sales guys. Would they sell this idea to the customer? If only 6 say that yes, they would, then we go back to the drawing board. We are not good enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. We call that in the IBM enterprise design thinking approach, we call it the hill statement. So you know which is the hill as a group of people you hike towards, right? Without knowing that, you will all go to different off tangents, right?
And if you're not brutally honest and actually state those success criteria up front, then you will fall in love with your idea and you will tweak the metrics to suit you.
That would be another watch out too. Yes.
All right. Then, okay, let's talk a bit about portfolios because it's a very important component in the life of a designer, right? So we already know that a good portfolio, as you mentioned, Mikael, is not only about showcasing nice executions and nice design, it's also about where are you coming from, what is your process and design thinking. But now we add another layer about this value. How can I showcase the value of my work? Do we have any KPIs or metrics that our candidates should be aware of for each of their projects?
Okay.
If you go ahead,
go first. Yeah.
Keeping the structure. I think for this, I really like the question. Looking at portfolios is always amazing. Most of them are bad though. So how can we improve them is that if you have a hiring manager who is designer, they are very, very interested in your process, in your design methodology. But if you have somebody who is basically more of a business person, let's say a director, they are more interested in like, what is the challenge you're trying to solve? What was your role in that process? And what is the outcome and a business impact? So basically to me, a good case study in your portfolio should have a key structure, like what is the challenge? What is your role in this project? Or what was your role in the project? What is the outcome? I designed 2 apps, I designed landing page, I designed a website, and what is the business impact of it? Let's say that the landing page I designed increased this business. And if you don't have the business impact and the outcomes, you don't really have the main meal for the business people to look at, because honestly, design methodology is usually very, very similar, designer to designer. You have a double diamond, you have certain frameworks. So there is not too much space for originality in a way, but the impact and how you solve the challenge, that's the intriguing part. So how you can showcase, for example, the business impact, you don't have to talk about money all the time. So what I do usually, or what I tell the designers in our team, for example, is that you can have a multiple different numbers or different number of different metrics that you use for your case studies. And some metrics can be about money, like this mobile app, basically making sure that the revenue are increased by this number. This is the number of new customers that I brought in for this business. But at the same time, you can even think about non-monetary KPIs. For example, something that my solution helping making environment cleaner. It saves time for my customers. So for example, instead of like Apple had a great case study when they decreased time from 10 days to 10 minutes when you want to replace your product. So it's not always only about money. It's the value of you as a designer, of your case study, can be even something, you know, helping environment or saving time for people, or maybe have the savings like Mikael mentioned. It doesn't have to be always about making more money. It can also be more broader, but these key metrics you should always have as a business impact for any case study. Because basically if you only have design methodology and descriptions and the pictures, you are missing like the final touch, the main meal for most business people. And when they look at it,
it can even double your salary. Then they can look at your portfolio and they will say, oh wow, this person doubled the revenues for the previous company that he'd been at. That's incredible. We want to hire him right away. But if we only have methodologies and like these UI samples and things like that, people with decision-making power, again, they will not understand what you bring to the table, and they will be hesitant to hire you, which is especially relevant like now in the COVID situation where a lot of designers are out of job. And I think if I'm a designer looking for a new job right now, the most focused I would be, or the most attention I would be paying to this chunk of a case studies. You know, what is the outcome and what is the business impact of my work for that business? Not giving people dribblings.
Thank you.
And maybe to add to that also, first of all, showcasing some value, whether it's savings or added revenue or whatnot, is already a big bonus and puts your portfolio probably in the top 10 already.
Yeah.
However, then if you can also contextualize those values and metrics, so okay, you created this much of revenue, what is that in the context of the industry that this app, for example, is operating in? Is that a top 5 achievement? Is that the upper half of the industry, and so on? And one from a purely personal point of view, and maybe a more intangible thing that I always value in portfolios, is also to show what value you as a person bring, not only your design, but what is your personal skills and things outside the design field even. So language skills, culture, experience, living abroad. I have one, I was interviewing a service designer for a position, and there was a gap in her CV, and I was asking, well, why didn't you put in anything there? What were you doing during this time? Oh, I was a kindergarten teacher. I thought it's not important. My God, a kindergarten teacher is the perfect, like, creative workshop facilitator. So bring out these things. One of our best workshop facilitators in the company actually has improvisation theater and stand-up as a hobby. So that's bring out these things from your private life as well that can add value. You are a person, you are not a bunch of numbers. So even though we talk now about value and we talk about numbers and showcasing in the end, the business value, remember that designers are maybe uniquely qualified to also showcase other values, and we are persons who come as a comprehensive package, and every part of that puzzle can bring value in the end. If you do the homework and think what value could the person looking at your portfolio be looking for, it might be surprising.
Yeah, I think it's important for our candidates to understand that KPIs is not only money, because as a recruiter, sometimes when I ask, okay, what was the outcome? And they're like, yeah, not really, we didn't sell that much. But when I ask deeply, they tell you, for example, we had this kind of number of people downloading the app, or people putting their personal data on the website. So all these are actually KPIs, and sometimes they forget that it's really valuable. So yeah, thank you guys. Do you want to add something?
I think the watch out is not to artificially fabricate or manufacture some sort of outcome. I think the most important part is actually having a point of view. There's too many portfolio does not have a point of view. Your work is an extension of you. As a, if you want, a designer, at the end of the day, sometimes you still want to think of yourself as an artist, okay? So that's fine. But even as an artist, you self-expressing your work, your point of view through your work. So it's the same thing as a business designer, as a service designer, as a UX UI designer. What is your point of view? There's too many things, like Jan was saying. If you fall back into methodology, it's not a point of view. It's just an approach. It's just how everyone works, right? But how do you see that problem? What is that business problem? What is that design problem? Have that point of view. I think too often the reason that we think most of the portfolio is not good enough is because it's lack of a point of view. It's just throw screen on piece of paper and then expect the audience to make sense out of it. But that's not my job. Your job is to express your point of view. How do you look at that problem? And if you look at it clear enough, if you think hard enough, it doesn't even matter if it doesn't have a business outcome. I know sometimes, especially for more junior designers, you really, it's difficult to have that measurement, or your role is rather, smaller in the project. So it's hard to claim because of this design of this UI, you put more space in it, or the font is a bit smaller, so it leads to that business outcome. But have a piece of thinking, have a point of view to express, why do I put more space in that UI? Because I believe it will lead people to be more focused on your content. So that is my goal. I'm hoping to make people to stay a little bit longer on that particular screen because of this. So that is your own point of view. And I think it's important as designer to have a point of view.
Plus it makes you unique, which is always good.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. Then last question, a bit practical. Do you have, guys, in mind any example of a brand that we can correlate, like the design index score with the business performance? Any benchmark that you have in mind?
Any benchmark? I would say that a good example for companies would be about design language system, which Mikael already mentioned. Because, for example, huge companies, they are releasing a big amount of different products, mobile apps, websites. And for example, Mikael is from IBM, and they have a system called Carbon, right? Yeah. And basically this system makes sure that whatever the company releases, whatever product you release, it has consistent experience. You don't have to always design and front-end develop or develop it twice. So it's a huge savings in terms of economical costs for your design products. And like, if you now look at companies like Apple, they have human interaction guidelines, Google has material design, IBM has Carbon, and these companies are basically making the design process much more efficient. So rather than them focusing on always designing something new, they actually focusing more on the problems and then the challenges of the product itself, rather than think about look and feel all the time. So I think from this perspective, I think the companies I mentioned are setting excellent examples. So hats off, for example, to IBM for having Carbon. It's an extremely good case study. Apple is doing a great job. Google as well, of course, even they have a different approach. And from the product perspective, you have a company like Airbnb, which is leading with design because the founders are designers. So that's a bit of a unique situation, which is not always the case. But then you have companies like Tesla, which is leading with design first, and then everything else we will figure it out, the engineering and the production and everything, which is
like
an
the early age of Apple.
Yeah. So, and maybe last point what I would like to make about design is that it's not all about pretty pictures, but everyone in the world is a visual creature. So if your product, if it's digital or physical, if it looks bad, it already is sending a message to everyone that it's not professionally done. Meaning that the functionality, of course, is incredibly important, but it needs to be appealing and attractive to people, so it catches the attention and it brings the people, the users, to that product or service. Meaning that, for example, product like MacBook not only looks great, but it's excellent in functionality, but your attention going towards the presentation, the website is beautiful and everything. So it's some sort of a balance between beauty and functionality, where you can really bridge this gap and put things together. And if you are able to have excellent products, which works amazing, but look great at the same time, and you present them professionally, that's where you hit the home run, which is, for example, like Apple or even Tesla or some digital products. In bank, we can see in banking like Barclays or Monzo in UK. So these are the brands that I personally like to look at what they're doing and how, and see how can basically get my own inspiration from it in a way.
Thank you.
Well, Thank you, Jan, for championing IBM. It's better than me saying it. I don't want to
thank you, Jan. As a consumer, I can tell you I'm fascinated about how the banking and industry has changed. So I think 10 years ago, all the banks were fighting on prices and on fees. And I'm fascinated by the war about design that is happening now in the market. Is all about who's going to have the more practical and the nicer app. And so thank you, Jan. Maybe we can jump to our Q&A session. Do you want to add something, guys, or are you curious by the question that we have received?
Yeah, I would love to.
No, I don't have anything to add to this. I think Jan had very good benchmarks, and maybe one thing is that in B2B, I don't think we have these kind of strong examples yet. One thing that came to mind was Caterpillar, but that's maybe because they sell shoes as well as excavators. But it's really interesting, and I know a lot of the C-suite guys in my industry and the peers are envious of these kind of brands, and they are for sure staying up at night wondering what can they do to come to the same level. So definitely exciting time to be a designer in B2B as well.
It's actually it's interesting you mentioned B2B because while I cannot disclose names, but it's actually that is an area that is growing more and more interesting for design, because a lot of our clients are actually focusing on redesigning the enterprise experience. So at IBM iX, we actually see ourselves as business designer. We look into these huge enterprise corporate and then design the employee experience, the service experience, internally how the employee use an app to facilitate the manufacturing, the servicing of bringing product to the user, to the end customers. And I think it's catching up. I think the B2B side, maybe I shouldn't use the word catching up because the approach is different. And at times it is even more sophisticated because the problem that they are solving is even more complicated. But I guess that would be something for job seeker to look into, which will be difficult because a lot of time it's quite hidden. I think that benchmark is not just the end outcome. When we talk about benchmark, it's not end outcome of a product or service, but at times it also means the maturity of that company culture.
And it's a great point. And I would only add that basically people are now so spoiled that they expect the same level of experience that they have from Uber or Netflix, even in their B2B platforms, right?
Yeah.
They are not making difference that it's just an enterprise
That's
platform.
no different, yeah.
I want that Netflix treatment in here as well. Go and do it,
Yeah. God knows how many times I've told some of our business clients is that, you shouldn't really separate the difference between the experience difference between the consumer side and the commercial side or the internal side, because everyone is an end user. Like you said, everyone's on Netflix, everyone's on iPhone. That experience is the same. So
that's the benchmark.
Which is why that's the benchmark. Yeah. And I think some of the banks in Asia is moving towards that. But if I have to be very honest, I'll say none of them are there yet. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Let me check our questions. So I have one specifically dedicated to you, Jan. I'm sorry.
I hope it's something good,
Yeah. It says, how would you pitch pricing to an early phase startup who are still figuring out their customers and potential revenue?
How would I pitch pricing? Meaning that I want investment, or I'm pitching to, do I want money as an investment, or I don't understand the nature of a question like 100%. Like, do I want to pitch to investors for my startup?
Is the business model are they talking about?
Let me repeat. Maybe the person will be adding more information.
It's okay. It's an interesting question. So how do I
pitch pricing to an early phase startup who is figuring out their customers and potential revenue?
So what's their pricing model or business model?
It sounds like the pricing model, but that's a big problem if they don't know who their customers are.
I would put them in front of a business model canvas and start noticing which boxes they can't fill in, and then put them to study those parts.
I think just maybe I'm just answering a bit more broad, right? When it comes to pricing and startups, a lot of pricing that startup services has is completely misaligned with the market, you know? So for example, you have a startup in Malaysia and the startup wants to be selling something to people, but the price that they set is completely misaligned. It's not the price that people are willing to pay. And the customer value proposition, if it's not clear for people, they will not be giving you the money. So I think how I would pitch when it comes to pricing and startups, obviously if I pitch to investors, I would be more focusing on how my startup is going to make money and scale, because that's the most kind of pressing questions, like how do I make money short term, but then later how do I scale to big heights? And if I'm thinking about from the user perspective, from the customer lens, I would really focus on having a really strong value proposition for customers, meaning that a lot of people would, even if you have a normal citizen on a street, they are willing to pay money for premium services, but you have to explain it to them well. And in Southeast Asia, you have a middle class boom. More and more people are basically having money to spend, but they need to understand why they pay more money for something. So if you are able as a startup to explain how is it going to make their life better or easier, the value proposition is clear. I mean, a lot of people would be surprised that customers would be willing to spend money on something, but they need to understand what is the value that is bringing to them. What is the benefit of the service?
In advertising, we always ask the question, what's in it for them, right?
Yeah. And
if you can't answer that question, there's no point to figure out how much you're selling. There's no pricing portal. Yeah.
All right.
I hope I understood it right,
Next one.
It's a common question. I think a lot of startups have that issue.
Yeah.
Please tell the person who asked the question if you wanna reach out to me on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah. Okay, let's do another one. Most companies focus more on the utility and stability of their product rather than the UX and the UI side when it's the first stage of product development. When do you think is the best time or the best phase for companies to start thinking or focusing on analyzing or improving their user experience?
Day one.
Yeah, because some are not like
really, I mean,
design native.
You can have as beautiful a backend as possible, but no one is gonna appreciate that. That's what was said here earlier as well. If it looks subpar, people will automatically perceive it as not professional and not of high quality. And that's actually tricky when you do user research. What I find, it might be that our customers are not so used to work in a co-creative manner, but it's a very fine balance of showing them something that is still early enough that they feel comfortable with commenting and shooting down if needed, versus showing them something very polished that they will feel bad in shooting down. So I've had situations where I notice that the comment starts being, yeah, it's quite nice, but there's something off and you have to push them. And when you push them, they say that, yeah, actually, I don't think this is needed, but it was looking so nice and I saw you put a lot of effort into it, so I didn't want to say it. And that's kind of a thing where you have to have your antennas out and find a balance.
I felt that question came from a designer who is really frustrated, and I can understand that pain. I think you cannot, as much as I would say that the best time to having that conversation is day one, I think you cannot try to convince everyone in your company in one go. It go back to the company culture, how much they value design. And I think you got to do it strategically. You got to find the right senior stakeholder, that one person who can be your sponsor to help you to drive that conversation. And you just need to convince one person, that one person up on top, to see why you need to balance between having a better user experience. Don't talk about UI at this moment. Don't talk about UI. Think about the UX. What is the experience? What is the experience, the impact of the experience, the benefit of the experience in a trade-off to having a beautiful backend or a utility functions and all that. Try to be understanding. You gotta balance things out. You cannot just say, hey, I design everything just for the user experience, and then you forget the rest of it. It's a business at the end of the day. So you gotta come up with this holistic conversation, have a balanced point of view, and convince that one person. And then you do it one step at a time. And then using the same tactic, you convince one business stakeholder, then you convince one technical stakeholder who can, you do it, look for those, or you prioritize as well. Look for those low-hanging fruit as well. Have some quick wins.
I think it's about also, let's say, what's the language you speak. We get tripped up quite a lot in terminology like proof of concept, prototype, MVP. So what we have done is we have actually defined what each of these are. So proof of concept is what maybe would be the beautiful backend, but we have a definition of proof of concept is not what we do user testing with. MVP, minimum viable product, is what we do user testing with. It might need a number of proof of concepts before we go there, and that's perfectly fine. But it is also finding the common language between all the stakeholders.
It would be good to add as well here that basically UX, the stability and utility and where do I find the product is all part of the UX. So the question should not really be when do I start with utility, stability and everything else and UX, because everything is kind of under that umbrella. And I agree with Michael that basically the best case scenario is that if you start at day one with the team, and how much you contribute, it depends on the product and the situation. Like sometimes it will require more UX thinking or design thinking. Sometimes it will require less. But if the designer is present at each step of the product development cycle, you can basically be there all the time and kind of at least give them the insights. And if it's a digital product, maybe you will be more needed in research and let's say ideation and visual design or something. If it's industrial product, the involvement might be different, but it's key for designers to have such a good relationship with stakeholders so they involve them since day one and not really only call them in the middle where all the major decisions are already decided and hey, we need something, please can you come here? So I think that's the kind of a North Star. That's where we want to be eventually, or where you want to be involved since day one and explaining people that hey, utility and stability and the all the other factors, they are part of the UX. They are not on site,
Well, given you shall receive, I don't think you should always just ask for other people to understand, right? From a designer point of view, you gotta make yourself available throughout the whole development, design process, business process, end to end. And to go back to what we talked about, the role of a designer is to facilitate, right?
Yeah, I think this question is coming from someone in a company where the designer didn't do his or her job to value the design at the beginning of the story. So, okay, I think it's a wrap, guys, because it's already 2 o'clock. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. Thank you to our attendees being here today with us. I put you these slides because I will thank as well my colleagues Charlotte in Hong Kong and Queen in Singapore who helped to make this happen. So you can reach out to us anytime on social media. We are open 24 hours. But if you are looking for a job or if you want support to hire or if you need any insight, please reach out to us. Okay? Have a nice week.
Feel free to reach out to us as well. Happy to continue the conversation.
For having us. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
sure.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice week.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.